very brightly colored and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while.
We want to be free to do what we want to do.
Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barger, the president of Hell's Angels.
This is 1095. Hey, Jayson, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Great. Yes, I'm doing really good. Thank you.
Cool. Cheers for, I know you've had a long day. It's what, 8 p.m. in the evening there. Excuse me. And I know you started early, so I appreciate you staying on a Saturday night to chat, but super interested to hear about all your projects, talk about movies, the industry, what's happening on that side of the world. But maybe as a, kind of first intro, maybe a bit of, bit of background on yourself from the wine industry to movies, I suppose, to put it in short. But good to hear a little bit about how you got into filmmaking before we talk about any of the specifics.
Yeah, so I went to college at Eastern Illinois University, and I was dating a girl, actually a knockout model. And when it came time to figure out what we were going to do, I said, I will move anywhere but to California. And she just so happened to get this job in California that paid for her relocation fees, first month's rent. It was just a killer deal. So, I lost out on that, and I followed her to California, and I didn't have a job. So filled out a lot of resumes, a lot of applications, and landed this job at this winery. I know nothing about wine, and it just so happened to be Francis Ford Coppola Winery. So they hired me on the spot, and I started pouring wine and eventually got into the film industry. But that's a little bit of a delayed story in itself.
Well, I didn't know Francis Ford Coppola had a winery until, I looked at your profile and kind of went back and looked at it. So that's interesting. And that is coincidental that obviously, movie-related winery, or does that have anything to do with the story in terms of getting into the industry as well?
So he started a winery just because, his family kind of always made wine. He was something that he was really always interested in. And, he did that to, kind of tie back into the film industry because a lot of his films have that wine influence. But my story, I got into the wine industry. I was a wine steward. I was terrible at it. So before they sacked me, they gave me an opportunity to work in creative marketing. And, that's where I got a chance to work with him and to, eventually transition into film.
Cool. Well, I'll try not to bounce around too much, but I can't help. It seems such a good segue because when I looked at your projects, one of them, of course, is wine related, counterfeit wine related. I got a bottle here that how do I get to that I had last night with my wife, and we were looking, and it was a good one, I think. But I have to say, the whole counterfeit wine situation here in Asia, where I am, I know my wine, and I know that at least 1 in every 5 bottles I'm drinking is. Well, you just have to look at the corks and stuff. But yeah, without us going down the path of a whole counterfeit wine history, tell us a bit about that project, that film. It sounds super interesting. I loved it. It really resonated with me. I think Reservoir Dogs was one of the films you linked to, which, I love Tarantino. I remember seeing that film at the movies. And of course, I've had a project in my past which had a fair few parallels. But yeah, talk to us a bit about that movie and what's it about and where it's up to.
So that film is called Counterfeit Cabernets, and it's loosely based on people that I grew up with in Chicago, and then my wine experience in Napa Valley. So the gist of the story is about a wine, I guess you could say a wine vintner that loves underground gambling, and he gets in over his head. He's playing this card, Texas Hold'em. He gets in way over his head. Now he owes this notorious gangster, Asian Rick, a lot of money, and he comes up with the ultimatum, either you pay me or I'm going to take you and your family out. So he concocts a plan with his friend to make some counterfeit wine, and through the proceeds of the sale, they'll be able to pay off the gangster, and maybe things will go right, maybe things won't, but that's the story. So lots of twists and turns in this one.
Awesome, mate. I love it. It really does resonate with me. It's gangsters, wine, people in trouble, good character arcs, getting through that. So
Yeah, it's a good setup.
So what is that? Is that a feature? I looked through your YouTube. You've done some really cool shorts, a fair few shorts that are awesome. Is this more of a feature length, right?
Yeah, this is a feature length. It's probably going to be about, I don't know, maybe an hour and 40 minutes when it's all said and done. Have a lot of great character arcs, as you were saying, and a lot of interesting characters. And that's kind of what I pride myself on as far as making films. I like to tell authentic characters and try to, have some relatability to them. So, yeah, I'm
Cool.
excited for this project and hope to do it.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Good luck with that. When you look at the filmmaking or the movie making process, there's so many different elements, so many different people involved, from line producers, fundraisers, actors, directors. I mean, it's what is it about the whole process that you love? Talk us through it a bit, and what is it that really attracted you to filmmaking as a process?
So I think filmmaking actually chooses you. I don't think anyone in their right mind says, I want to be a filmmaker, because, you have to go through so many ups and downs, and it's just the odds of actually succeeding are just so small. So I think it's something that ultimately chooses you. But in saying that, I think that filmmaking is the ultimate collaborative experience. You're working with, as you were saying, line producers, actors, people in camera, people in lighting, distributors, and then you're working with the audience, because you want your audience to have an experience with this film too. So it's really something that you want to be on your toes about. You want to respect everyone and their time and what they bring to the table. So I'm just really drawn to that, and I just want to make sure that everyone has a great experience.
What are there any particular parts of that you prefer, that you really relish? Obviously, I didn't even mention the writing part then, which is such a key part. And when you write a script, it's interesting. You start out with an idea, it evolves, and then as other people get involved, actors particularly, I mean, it can change so much, right? And I've always found you have to be careful not to be too attached to the original idea, because there's so many other influences and elements. But yeah, are there any particular areas that you love, within the process, or just holistically the whole thing itself?
I'd say I holistically, I love the whole process itself, but I really enjoy being on the set, working with the actors, and just kind of seeing the project kind of come together. I think there's nothing like seeing a project where everyone kind of sees eye to eye for a short amount of time to see this project come to fruition. I would say for me, one of the most challenging things is writing, because I wouldn't pride myself as a great writer, but I started to write out of the need to have quality scripts, and to have things that I could be attached to. So that's something I had to kind of work and develop myself.
Yeah, same. And it kind of never ends as well, right? I think when I'm by no means would brand myself a scriptwriter, but I have done some writing, and I think naively, when I worked on a script, I thought, I'll learn this process, I'll write this script. But it's amazing. You get to the end of a draft, and then you're straight back to kind of looking at where it can be tweaked and tinkered with. It's a continually evolving process, right? Writing a script.
Yeah, I remember I was a lot like you. I was just like, yeah, I'll pick it up. I know how to tell stories, and blah blah blah. And I wrote my first script, and I gave it to a guy that I knew. It's not like a friend or anything. And he reads it, and he says, and I'm expecting him to say, this was great, it's fantastic. He was just like, I got to tell you, this is the worst damn thing I ever read.
Yeah, I've been there.
And, yeah. So it was like, that was like, oh, it hurt my feelings. And, so from that point, I had to start reading a lot of scripts, and, really paying attention to characters and how they interacted, and just everything. So, I'd say I'm better, but, I wouldn't say that I'm like a Tarantino or anything like that, because that guy's just in another world. But yeah, it's something that you just keep hacking away at and getting better.
Getting used to that. I mean, I think being able to take the negative stuff. I mean, any kind of creative endeavor, you gotta be able to take that on board, right? Because there's always going to be those voices, and you can learn from those as well. So,
yeah, I think you have to be open to take criticism, because if you don't, then you're never going to grow in this industry. So,
Indeed. And for me, one of the looking at the movie space, the funding element of movies is, I think, the biggest challenge. I mean, maybe not for everyone, and certainly, obviously, in the big screen movies, funding comes. It's very different. But when you're breaking into filmmaking, when you're doing indie movies, that whole process of how much to spend, when to raise, how to raise, it's particularly challenging. How have you approached that? Do you have any good kind of stories around that? The good, the bad.
Sure. So it's interesting. So the first 4 or 5 years, I didn't ask anyone for anything. I just said, I'm learning this, so I just kind of want to make sure that no one really feels like they're obligated to give me any money. So finally, I got to the point where I felt like I was worthy enough to, fundraise, and I did Kickstarter, and I needed to raise $22,000. And Kickstarter is all or nothing for people that don't know. I had a month to do it, and as soon as I hit that start campaign, it was like someone put this 22,000-pound weight on my shoulders, and the time is ticking. So I was calling family members and just asking, how about $10? No. How about $8? No. How about $5? No. How about $2? Man, if you don't quit calling me, and it was incredible. The people that you think that were automatically going to help you, they don't. People that you never would think that would give you any money. I knew this guy that I worked with, and I don't even think he liked me, and he gave me $1,500. So
Cool.
Fundraising is a really interesting ordeal. You have to just be in it. You can't stop. It's a don't say die attitude, and you just have to see that finish line and cross it.
Yeah, man, I can relate to everything you just said then. So did you, with the Kickstarter campaign, did you complete that? You got your target, did you?
Yeah, so we ended up raising $25,000, and I want to say $4,000 came on the 28th day.
Yeah, right.
So I had 1 day.
Everyone says this about crowdfunding, and I'm in the process of it now. Nothing to do with movies, but everyone says whatever you do, it's always going to be this kind of last minute. The kind of fear of missing out kicks in, and you get a chunk at the last minute. So, but yeah, congrats on that. And it's interesting to hear. I mean, I have not used Kickstarter. What's the other one? Indiegogo. There's a few of them, but I've not really followed the kind of movie crowdfunding strategy. I've seen some larger budget movies where maybe 3-4 million, where they've gone and raised say 300,000-400,000 on Kickstarter additionally, which is quite interesting. But yeah, a marketing background really helps with how you approach things like Kickstarter for sure. So 25, was that a budget to make a movie essentially? Was that a pilot? What did that allow you to do?
So that allowed me to make my first short film, Redress, and that covered a full crew, talent. I wanted to make sure that, because the crew is not getting full rate, or the actors aren't getting full rate, that at least they had a good experience on set. So we made sure that they were fed really well. We made sure that the locations were top notch, and that the camera equipment and lenses were as best as we could afford. So, and then we had a little bit of money for festival run, which I think we ended up getting into like maybe 20 or 30 festivals with that one.
How have you? That was going to be my next question. So, I mean, this festival scene, I don't know a huge amount about. There's obviously the major ones, but there's also a plethora of smaller festivals and awards, and you've been successful from what I can see through that process. How have you? Yeah, talk us through that a little bit more about it, and how have you seen that, if at all, provide you returns later on in terms of more contacts and additional funding and things like that?
So yeah, I haven't gotten into a lot of really large festivals. I want to say maybe the largest festivals I've gotten into are the Pasadena International Film Festival, and maybe one in New York that's fairly noteworthy. But we've gotten into a lot of middle and smaller festivals, and while that's great, it doesn't really push your project up to, to the distributors, investors that, can really, change your life as far as a filmmaker, because, that distribution and funding are just so important for an independent filmmaker. So I haven't quite cracked the code for that yet. I'm manifesting my ass off right now, and we'll see what happens. And but yeah, I need to make a feature film, because really short films are kind of like a business card showing what you can do.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah,
the short film. I mean, yeah, I know a couple of people, one in particular, who did really well with using a short film to basically seed the process of making a feature length film, which is where the real stuff happens, right? And you mentioned the word distribution there. I mean, it's such a difficult, it's such an important piece of the puzzle if you're making a feature film, but it's also not easy to get, right? And yeah, how if at all, what's your experience on the distribution side of movies? Yeah, I mean, how are you approaching that? Have you already kind of managed to secure distribution on other projects?
So I've said no on a lot of distribution deals that I've gotten, just because they were just so, I was just, by the time you break the numbers down and what you would actually get in return, from kind of giving the rights away to your project, it's just like, well, what's the point? I haven't really cracked the code with that. The ones that I received just said no. But there's a lot of filmmakers that are really, they think that getting on Netflix or Amazon is like the pinnacle. And it's really not, because, streaming is such a, it's kind of a shady business when you think about it, because you don't get to see the numbers of the streaming numbers for your film. And then they can, the streaming execs could say, yeah, your film only did $500,000 worth of streams. And, that's what you get. I know a filmmaker that he made an animated feature and put it on Netflix, and he got a return of $400,000. Had he put it in in a theatrical when he had opportunity, he would have got $40 million.
Wow.
So
okay.
Yeah, it's just like, crazy. So, now he's still making commercials for Nike, killing himself. So it's sad. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and what
lightning
about...
doesn't...
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, sometimes lightning doesn't strike twice, and you only have that one opportunity to get that one big project out. So.
Yeah, indeed. I was just going to ask you, in terms of what do you see as the critical kind of aspects of securing some sort of distribution? The obvious, you would think the obvious answer to that is, you got some sort of name in your cast, that can open up doors. But not always, and it is changing. The industry is very different now than it was 10 years ago as well. It's changing rapidly. But yeah, what are the key things that you see in terms of securing some sort of distribution?
I think you have to have a really interesting concept. And I think you're right when it comes to talent. I think that Tom Cruise is really the last big ticket Hollywood action movie star. Because, a lot of talent that you see are popular for playing Thor or Iron Man, or, but, when you strip that title or that character from them, the movies that they put out as just, and I think Chris Hemsworth is a great actor, and I'm by no means picking on him. But, he's put out a lot of projects just as Chris Hemsworth that don't do well, but then Thor does, it just kills. So it's just like, he's known for being Thor, not necessarily, not in the way that Tom Cruise is known for Tom Cruise. And now he can pretty much be in any film and it'd be successful. So yeah, I think that you just have to have an interesting concept, and you have to have a innovative distribution partner that is willing to push your project in a virality way that you can kind of get, people at the theaters to see it.
Yeah, and you just mentioned before, when you used that example of someone who, got a few $100,000 off Netflix and could have got millions out of the theaters. And what's your view on the whole kind of theater scene versus streaming? I mean, personally, for me, I love going to the theater, but it does seem like the kind of the big ticket Hollywood films are the ones that still fill, and it's harder with, most people will still kind of wait, and obviously Netflix does a lot of its own features now. Like, are you still focused on, for example, with your own projects? Are you like, I want to get this into a theater? That's the kind of goal, or yeah?
Yeah, I think for me, I want to do theatrical, and I'm just really not satisfied with streaming because I want whomever watches my film projects to enjoy it, and I've noticed with streaming, you sit down in front of the couch, you gotta get your your beer, your wine, or whatever, and then you start arguing with your girlfriend or your wife, and then you press pause, and you're just like, what do we even watch this movie for anyway? So you watch like 10 minutes of it, and then you forget about it. But if you're at the theater, then you're dedicating yourself to that time, that experience. You're gonna watch it throughout. So I want to try to get away from that. I know that we're in a digital age, and people just are multi-purpose these days, but I guess I'm a sucker for the romance of theaters, and that's what I want.
Yeah, man, yeah. I'm with you. I'm the same. I mean, I watch a lot of TV, I watch Netflix and stuff, but yeah, when it comes to big movies, I'm theater. We went the other week, we watched Civil War, which is a little bit scary, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
That was in terms of this year in the US, and a very interesting timing for a film, but it was pretty good actually for a big screen movie. So
I think, speaking of that, I think that's what's hurting Hollywood is there's so much politics in films these days.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's got to be representation, and all this stuff. And that's inherently not a bad thing. But, when you swap out a character just to, check a diversity box, then, what are we doing here? So it's just, I feel like that has really driven down the motivation of people going to theaters and paying money because they don't want to be preached at. They want to be entertained.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like we're getting to a bit of a turning point on that, because I think anyone who has a sensible head on their shoulders agrees with the importance of diversity, but forcing diversity is not diversity, right? So, but it feels like there's a bit of a turning point, particularly I think with the challenges Disney have had and stuff like that. So, it does feel like things are getting back to a sensible level. I hope, because I agree with exactly your sentiment, what you're saying there.
Yeah. So it's just, and Disney is like the worst offender. It's just like
100%.
Yeah. I saw this meme, and I don't know if this is appropriate to say on your show, but it said, take a popular 80s show, make everyone gay, collect $100 million from Netflix.
It's completely appropriate.
Yeah, and I was just like, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
I mean, they're the ones that are suffering from it. I mean, frankly, their bottom line, and they've had some good movies, but yeah, they've had some stuff tank recently. So we shall see. And yeah, just kind of mucking up old stories and stuff. But anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole too far. But maybe slightly parallel though, the technology. What's your sense on the kind of tech advancements in the space, particularly with AI and yeah, I suppose, straight question, do you use any of the new technology? Do you see it as, hey, it gets in the way? I know there's been, people marching and understandably so, people are worried about losing their jobs because certainly with the kind of more broad TV type stuff where AI can really speed up stuff. Yeah. What's your view on it? Are you using anything? Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually use AI in my pitch decks to create the photos. And I think it's great. I think that you can't really be afraid of technology, because the second that you approach technology with fear, then that's when, that kind of, you get more of that. So I always look at technology as it's a tool, and you can use it to, improve your scripts, improve your projects. But, I do kind of get the fear part. I watched a whole trailer for a Hallmark movie where it was completely AI. It was written in AI. They had like these actors that were completely AI, and all the scenery was AI. So I guess it's going to be a complete AI movie on the Hallmark Channel, but who watches that? So, but I don't know. It'd be interesting.
What was the quality of the? I've not seen this, but I've seen some pretty scary stuff that's not been released yet. I think it was through OpenAI, where they were just showing the construction of like a 2-minute piece of film from very simple commands, and I'm like, I can't tell this is not a real person. Was it that quality, or was it the more AI stuff that looks like
it was the stuff that looks kind of wonky? It was just like you have like the pretty girl and her head doesn't move and she was like, I love you, stuff like that. So, but give it 2-3 years, it's really going to be good, because I think with their wide shots, like their establishing shots, that looks real. You cannot tell the difference, but you can tell when you're looking at someone. You can still tell that there's something a little bit off. But if you look at AI generated videos from just maybe 15 months ago, it's like night and day. It's so much better. So it's going to eventually get to the point where it's just the Matrix, and it's like there's going to be production studios that just pushing stuff out, and people are going to be consuming.
Yeah, I do wonder. Like you mentioned Tom Cruise earlier. I'm like, in 20 years, will we just be watching new Tom Cruise films because they'll basically be able to regenerate Tom Cruise as he is today, or as he has been in the last decade, and put him into a new film? I mean, it will not. It's probably not that far away now, being able to do that, which is kind of freaky and a bit of a shame. As much as I love Tom Cruise, it's kind of nice when people retire and go away. But yeah, I do wonder whether that kind of stuff will happen just because of the dollar weight that he brings to the industry and the ability to kind of regenerate that.
I think so. I mean, there's I think there's like Instagram influencers that they're completely generated and they have like millions of followers, and whomever created this depiction of whomever that this is, they're making a lot of money just off of just AI and just prompt commands. So I think it's going to be lucrative. It's going to be interesting. I'm not going to worry about it as a filmmaker. I always think that there's a way for the human experience. So I'm not going to plug into the computer just yet. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think your first comment really, it's there. You can't run away with it. You just got to see how it supports you rather than it gets in the way,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the Bay. You're in the Bay Area, right? Now that's where you are. I've not been. Actually, I'd probably be there later in the year, but I've been to the US many times. When people think about the movie industry, they think about LA. In the US, they think about Hollywood. Mm-hmm. But what is the scene like there? Does it have a scene? I couldn't. If you asked me, I couldn't name you as someone who lives outside of the US. I couldn't really kind of think of what represents the Bay Area in terms of movies. And is that just because I don't know, or is it because it's not really on the map in the same way, or
So LA is, a much different type of beast because, I guess you could say that's like the film mecca. All the studios are down there. They have all the actors, all the networking is there. San Francisco and the Bay Area is pretty much kind of like a location town. We have great locations, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Bay Bridge. We have like iconic areas in San Francisco, Oakland, and et cetera. So a lot of times, a San Francisco film will come here, film maybe for a couple of days just for the exteriors, and then they shoot all the interiors down there. But getting back to what you were saying, yes, we have a small community. It's more of an indie type community where lower budget film projects are done. But there have been great films that have been done here. I want to say the last Matrix was done here.
Okay.
The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith was done here. Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird was done in Sacramento, I want to say. So there's a lot of like lower budget projects that are done here. But for the big bustling huge projects, those are almost always done in LA.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Yeah, I suppose much like it's hard to kind of go past LA, just the Hollywood aspect, and of course the AFM, which is in Santa Monica, the big film market kind of festival is there, and So interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't have any other questions. However, I'd love to hear, I suppose as a kind of closing question, you know, what advice would you give to other people wanting to break into filmmaking and get into the industry, and particularly with what we've talked about, you know, how it is now and how nuanced it is in terms of what you can do with new technologies and stuff. But yeah, what advice would you give to people thinking about, you know, jumping into filmmaking?
First, I would answer that with a pre-qualifying question, and that question would be, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" Because I meet a lot of filmmakers that they'll talk to me. They say, "Oh, I just want to be just like you," and blah blah blah. And I haven't even really done anything. I feel like I've scratched the surface of what I can do, but it's a really tough industry to get to this point. And so I'd ask them if they're sure that they want to endure the ups and downs, because this industry has given me a lot of wonderful experiences, but it's been really tough. And so I'd want to know if they're sure about that. And then if they are, then, I would tell them to pursue it with everything that they have. They almost want to be delusional in the sense that they're going to make it, because, there's so many no's and just so many, detours and closed doors. So you just want to just get to the point where you just say, I'm going to make it no matter what. I don't care if this is, and, it's just, you just got to have that mindset. And then usually those are the people that wait it out, last it out, and make it in the long run.
Yeah, awesome. It's not easy for sure, and massive credit to you, because there's one thing kind of wanting to make films. There's another thing wanting to try and make a living from making films, and there's a fairly big gap between those two things, and trying to kind of balance that as you kind of work on projects. And listening to you talk about doing the Kickstarter stuff, it's a lot of hard work, right? It's not all wonderful.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, they think it's all about going to the red carpet events and stuff like that, and answering the interviews and stuff like that. And yes, that is a part of it, but it's like maybe like 0.5% or 1% of the whole experience. The rest of it is just a grind, So they need to know that, and if they are in this industry for any extended amount of time, then I'm sure they will understand that.
Cool. And how can people find out more about yourself, your work, view the projects you're working on? And for anyone watching or listening, I'll also leave these links or whatever else in the speaker notes.
So I guess I'm to the point where I'm Googleable now. So you can Google me, Jayson Johnson, Jayson Johnson, and then even add a little film at the end of that. And a lot of my stuff will pop up, my YouTube channel, my Twitter, I guess X now, Instagram, etc. So I have all my socials, and I'm sure you'll put them in the story notes.
I will do, yeah. For anyone, listening, watching, I'll put those notes in. So, look, Jayson, I really appreciate it. I know you had a long day. You mentioned you did a podcast probably 12 hours ago, if not longer. So I really appreciate you staying awake for us and jumping on in the evening and my morning here in Southeast Asia. So it's been good to meet. I wish you all the success. Let's keep talking, and have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and I do it anytime, so no problem.
Cool.
We want to be free to do what we want to
Tour
do.
Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barker, the president of the Hells Angels.
This is 1095.